Olivia Bennett rushed through the back entrance of the Golden Key restaurant, 15 minutes before her shift began. She quickly hung her worn jacket in the staff room and put on the crisp white shirt and black pants that all waiters had to wear. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and she added just a touch of makeup to look professional. At 32, Olivia was older than most waitresses at this fancy Chicago restaurant, but she needed this job badly. "You're cutting it close again, Olivia," said Frank, the restaurant manager. He was a short man with thinning hair who always seemed stressed. "Sorry, Frank, my bus was late," Olivia said. She didn't mention that she had stayed up until 2 a.m. practicing piano pieces for her upcoming recital at the community music school. Frank handed her a stack of menus. "You've got sections 7 through 10 tonight. Be on your best behavior. We have some very important guests coming in." Olivia nodded and took a deep breath. The Golden Key was known for serving rich business people, celebrities, and politicians. The tips could be amazing on a good night, but the customers were often demanding and sometimes rude. As she walked through the kitchen, she heard the chef shouting orders. The cooks moved quickly, preparing fancy dishes that cost more than what Olivia made in a day. The restaurant smelled of expensive spices and freshly baked bread. "Hey, Olivia, how's the piano practice going?" asked Sam, another waiter who was filling water glasses. "Slow but steady," she replied with a small smile. "I'm still struggling with that Chopin piece." Sam knew about Olivia's dream. Unlike her, he was just working here to pay for college. "You'll get it," he said. "You're the most determined person I know." Olivia had been playing piano since she was 6 years old. Her parents couldn't afford lessons, so she taught herself using books from the library and free videos online. She had dreams of becoming a concert pianist, but life had gotten in the way. Now she took night classes at a local music school while working full-time to pay her bills. Sometimes she wondered if she was foolish to keep chasing this dream at her age. The first few hours of her shift went smoothly. She served a young couple celebrating their anniversary, a group of lawyers who barely looked up from their phones, and a family with 2 well-behaved children. Olivia was good at her job. She remembered who ordered what without writing it down. She smiled even when her feet hurt, and she made people feel welcome. At 8:30 p.m., Frank called all the waiters to the back. "Listen up, everyone. Richard Harlow just arrived with his business partners. They're sitting in section 9. He looked directly at Olivia. "That's your section." The other waiters looked at her with a mix of pity and relief. Richard Harlow was a billionaire who owned several tech companies. He was also known for being extremely difficult. "Don't mess this up," Frank warned. "Mr. Harlow could become a regular if we impress him tonight." Olivia's hands felt sweaty as she walked to table 9. 6 men in expensive suits sat there laughing loudly. Richard Harlow was easy to spot. He was in his mid-40s with salt and pepper hair and sharp blue eyes. He wore a watch that probably cost more than Olivia's yearly rent. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said with her best smile. "Welcome to the Golden Key. My name is Olivia, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. May I start you off with some drinks?" Richard barely looked at her. "Bring us your most expensive bottle of red wine, 2 bottles actually, and tell the chef to prepare something special. We're not even going to look at the menu." "Of course, sir," Olivia said, writing it down. One of the other men spoke up. "And make sure the wine is properly aged. Last place we went served us something that tasted like vinegar." "Our wine selection is excellent, sir. I'll make sure you're happy with it," Olivia promised. As she walked away, she could feel Richard's eyes on her back. She hurried to the wine cellar and carefully selected 2 bottles of the restaurant's finest red wine, priced at $900 each. The wine specialist, an older man named Joe, raised his eyebrows. "Table 9?" he asked. "Richard Harlow." Olivia confirmed. Joe whistled. "Good luck. I've heard stories about him." When Olivia returned with the wine, the men were talking loudly about some business deal. She opened the bottles with practiced hands and poured a small amount for Richard to taste. He swirled it in his glass, sniffed it, and took a small sip. His face gave nothing away. "It'll do," he finally said. Olivia poured wine for everyone at the table, then explained the chef's special selections for the evening. Throughout this, Richard kept checking his phone, barely acknowledging her presence. As the evening went on, Richard became increasingly critical. The bread was too cold, the lighting was too bright, and the music playing softly in the background was giving him a headache. "Who hired that piano player?" Richard asked loudly, pointing to the older man playing gentle classical music on the grand piano in the corner. "He's terrible." Olivia felt her cheeks get hot. Mr. Peterson had been playing at the Golden Key for years. He was kind and talented, though tonight he did seem to be struggling a bit. "I apologize if the music isn't to your liking, sir," she said. "Mr. Peterson has been with us for a long time." "Well, he should retire," Richard said, making his friends laugh. "I've heard better playing from a child." Olivia bit her tongue and went to check on their main courses in the kitchen. When she returned with their steaks and seafood, Richard complained that his meat was overcooked, even though he had asked for it medium well. "Take it back," he ordered, "and tell the chef to get it right this time." Frank noticed the problem and rushed over. "Is everything okay, Mr. Harlow?" "Your waitress is bringing me food I didn't order," Richard said coldly. Olivia started to explain, but Frank cut her off. "I'll handle this, Olivia. Please tell Chef Mike to prepare a new steak immediately." In the kitchen, Olivia's hands shook as she relayed the order. Chef Mike cursed under his breath but started cooking a new steak right away. "Don't let him get to you," said Lisa, another waitress. "Guys like that get off on making people feel small." "I need this job," Olivia whispered. "I've got rent due next week and music school tuition the week after." When she brought the new steak, Richard didn't even thank her. He just cut into it, nodded once, and continued his conversation. Olivia checked on other tables in her section, but kept a close eye on table 9, refilling wine glasses and clearing plates promptly. At the front of the restaurant, Mr. Peterson stood up from the piano, rubbing his hands. He walked over to Frank and said something in a low voice. Frank looked concerned and nodded. Frank approached Olivia as she was entering a dessert order into the computer system. "Mr. Peterson's arthritis is acting up. He needs to go home, but Mr. Harlow's party is still here, and they'll expect music throughout their meal." "Can't someone else play?" Olivia asked. "Our backup pianist is out sick. We might have to go without music for the rest of the night." Frank looked worried. "Mr. Harlow already complained about the quality of the music. I don't want to give him another reason to be unhappy." Olivia looked over at Richard's table. They were loud now, clearly feeling the effects of the expensive wine. Richard was gesturing with his hands, telling some story that had his friends leaning in close. In the corner, the beautiful grand piano sat empty. Olivia had admired it many times, wishing she could play it instead of the old upright piano at her apartment that had 3 broken keys. "I could play," she said quietly. Frank looked surprised. "You play piano? Well enough for a place like this?" Olivia nodded. "I've been playing most of my life. I take advanced classes at the Chicago Music Institute." Frank considered this. "Let me think about it. For now, just keep Mr. Harlow's party happy." As Olivia approached table 9 again, she heard Richard complaining. "Where did the piano player go?" Not that he was any good, but at least it covered up the sound of people chewing. He laughed at his own joke. His friends laughed too, but Olivia could tell they were just being polite. One of them, a younger man with kind eyes, looked embarrassed. "The pianist had to leave unexpectedly," Olivia explained as she cleared their plates. "Would anyone care for dessert or coffee?" Richard looked annoyed. "So we get no music for the rest of our very expensive meal? What kind of place is this?" Frank appeared beside Olivia. "Actually, Mr. Harlow, we might have a solution. Olivia here is quite an accomplished pianist." Olivia felt her face grow hot as Richard turned his sharp blue eyes on her. He looked her up and down, taking in her waitress uniform and sensible shoes. "You?" he asked with a smirk. "You play piano?" Olivia stood up straighter. "Yes, sir, I do." Richard exchanged glances with his friends. A cruel smile spread across his face. "Well, this should be interesting," he said. "Let's see what our waitress can do." Olivia felt all eyes on her. The restaurant had gotten quieter and several guests at nearby tables were watching with interest. She looked at Frank, who gave her an encouraging nod, though she could see worry in his eyes. "I'd be happy to play a few pieces," Olivia said, trying to sound confident. Richard leaned back in his chair, swirling the expensive wine in his glass. "This should be entertaining. Tell you what, waitress, if you're actually good, I'll leave you a $1,000 tip." His business partners laughed, but the younger man with kind eyes looked uncomfortable. "That's very generous, sir," Olivia said, though she didn't believe him for a second. Richard waved his hand dismissively. "Go on then. Show us what you can do, and bring us some dessert menus when you're done embarrassing yourself." Olivia took a deep breath and walked toward the grand piano. Her heart was beating so fast she thought everyone must hear it. The piano was much nicer than anything she had ever played before, a Steinway concert grand that probably cost more than she would make in 10 years. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it, feeling the smooth, polished wood beneath her fingers. The keys were perfectly white and black, not yellowed with age like her old piano at home. Olivia closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her courage. When she opened them, she saw Richard watching her with an amused expression. He whispered something to his friends, making them chuckle. Clearly, he expected her to fail. Olivia began with a simple piece she knew well, Mozart's Turkish March. Her fingers moved carefully at first, getting used to the touch of the keys. The piano responded beautifully to even her lightest touch, producing rich, clear tones that filled the restaurant. As she played, she noticed some diners pausing their conversations to listen. Richard, however, barely paid attention. He was looking at his phone, occasionally glancing up with a bored expression. Olivia finished the piece and received polite applause from several tables. Richard looked up from his phone. "Is that it?" he called out. "I could find better piano music on a department store sound system." His cruel words stung, but Olivia didn't let her face show it. Instead, she decided to try something more challenging. She began playing Chopin's Fantaisie Impromptu, a complex piece with fast runs that required skill and precision. As the beautiful melody filled the air, more people stopped eating to listen. Waiters paused with trays in hand. Even Frank, who had been nervously watching from near the kitchen, relaxed a little and leaned against the wall. Olivia's fingers danced across the keys, gaining confidence with each note. She had practiced this piece hundreds of times in her tiny apartment, but never on such a magnificent instrument. The piano seemed to respond to her emotions, the notes flowing like water. When she finished, the applause was louder. An elderly couple at a nearby table smiled warmly at her. A woman at another table wiped a tear from her eye. Olivia glanced at Richard's table. He was still talking to his friends, though one of them, the younger man with kind eyes, was watching her with genuine appreciation. Richard noticed his friend's attention had shifted and frowned. "Jeffrey, are you actually enjoying this amateur hour?" Richard asked loudly. Jeffrey, caught off guard, stammered, "She's quite good, Richard. Give her a chance." Richard rolled his eyes. "I've heard better at my niece's recitals, and she's 12. He raised his voice so Olivia could hear him clearly. "Hey, waitress, do you know anything written this century? Or do you only play dead people's music?" The restaurant got very quiet. Everyone was watching now, uncomfortable with Richard's rudeness but too polite or intimidated to say anything. Olivia felt her cheeks burn. She had dealt with difficult customers before, but Richard seemed determined to humiliate her. For a moment, she considered walking away, going back to taking orders and pretending this had never happened. Then she thought about all the nights she had stayed up practicing, all the extra shifts she had taken to pay for music classes, all the times people had told her she was too old to pursue her dream. Something shifted inside her. Olivia looked directly at Richard. "I know plenty of modern pieces, sir. Any requests?" Richard seemed surprised by her confidence. He hadn't expected her to challenge him. "Something actually worth listening to," he said dismissively. Olivia nodded and turned back to the piano. She took a deep breath and began to play a complex piece by a modern composer that she had been working on for months. It started softly, almost hesitantly, then built into powerful chords that resonated throughout the restaurant. This time, conversations completely stopped. Servers stood still, food getting cold on their trays. The kitchen staff peered through the swinging doors to listen. Even the bartender paused mid-pour. Olivia lost herself in the music. She forgot about Richard, forgot about being a waitress, forgot about everything except the feeling of the keys beneath her fingers and the beautiful sounds they created. She closed her eyes, letting the music flow through her. When she opened them again, she saw that Richard had put down his phone. He was watching her with an unreadable expression. She finished the piece with a flourish, and the restaurant erupted in applause. Several people stood up, clapping enthusiastically. Someone whistled. Frank looked amazed, his earlier worry replaced with pride. Olivia stood and gave a small bow, her face flushed with exhilaration. She had never played so well before, never felt so connected to the music. As she walked back to Richard's table, customers reached out to touch her arm, murmuring compliments. An older woman grabbed her hand and said, "That was beautiful, dear. Simply beautiful." Richard didn't clap. He watched her approach with narrowed eyes, as if seeing her for the first time. His friends were all smiling and clapping, even those who had laughed at his jokes earlier. "That was impressive, Olivia," Jeffrey said warmly. "Do you play professionally?" "Not yet," Olivia replied. "I'm studying at the Chicago Music Institute. I work here to pay for classes." Richard cleared his throat. "Not bad," he admitted grudgingly. "Better than I expected from a waitress." Coming from him, it was almost a compliment. Olivia smiled politely. "Thank you, sir. Would you like to see those dessert menus now?" "In a minute," Richard said. He leaned forward, studying her face. "Where did you learn to play like that?" "I've been playing since I was 6, Olivia said. "Mostly self-taught until recently." "Self-taught?" one of the other men asked, sounding surprised. Olivia nodded. "My family couldn't afford lessons when I was growing up. I used books from the library and free videos online. Now I take night classes after work." Richard's expression changed slightly, something flashing in his eyes that might have been respect or maybe just curiosity. "Play something else," he said. It wasn't a request but a command. Frank appeared beside Olivia. "Mr. Harlow, Olivia still has other tables to attend to. Perhaps she could play again later?" "I'm paying enough to buy this whole restaurant for the night," Richard said dismissively. "I want to hear her play again. Now." Frank looked torn between keeping his important customer happy and letting his other waitress do her job. "Of course, Mr. Harlow. Olivia, would you mind playing one more piece? Sam can cover your tables for a few minutes." Olivia nodded, though she felt uncomfortable with Richard's demanding tone. As she walked back to the piano, she heard Richard say to his friends, "Let's see if that was a fluke or if she's actually talented." The restaurant was still unusually quiet. Everyone seemed to be waiting for her to play again. Olivia sat down, thinking about what to play next. She had impressed them with technical skill, but there was something else she wanted to show, something more personal. She began to play a piece she had been working on herself, a composition that expressed both joy and longing. She had started writing it after her mother's death 3 years ago, trying to capture the complicated feelings of loss and gratitude for the life they had shared. The melody started simply, then grew more complex, weaving together themes that spoke of childhood, memories, difficult goodbyes, and the beauty that remains even after someone is gone. Olivia had never played it for anyone before. It felt vulnerable, like sharing a private diary. As the music filled the room, Olivia dared to glance at Richard's table. For the first time that night, he wasn't talking to his friends or looking at his phone. He was completely still, his eyes fixed on her hands as they moved across the keys. What Olivia couldn't know was that the melody she played had accidentally touched something buried deep in Richard's memory, something he had tried very hard to forget. Olivia continued playing her original composition, her fingers finding the right keys without thought. The music flowed from some deep place inside her. She had never played it so well before, even during her long practice sessions at home. The po Restaurant remained completely silent except for the sound of the piano. Everyone was watching Olivia, but she only noticed Richard. Something had changed in his face. The coldness was gone, replaced by an expression she couldn't quite read. He sat very still, his wine glass forgotten in his hand. As Olivia played the middle section of her piece, the part that reminded her of her mother's laugh, she saw Richard close his eyes. His jaw tightened, as if he was fighting some strong emotion. The piece built toward its emotional peak, the notes climbing higher, growing more intense. Olivia poured all her feelings into it, her struggles, her dreams, her love for her mother who had always believed in her talent, even when they couldn't afford proper lessons. When she reached the final gentle notes that represented acceptance and peace, she saw Richard open his eyes. For just a moment, his confident mask had slipped. He looked lost, almost vulnerable. Olivia finished the piece, letting the final note hang in the air. For several seconds, nobody moved or spoke. Then the restaurant erupted in applause, even louder than before. Several people were wiping tears from their eyes. An older woman approached the piano. "Young lady, what was that beautiful piece you just played? I've never heard it before." "It's something I wrote myself," Olivia admitted shyly. "You composed that?" The woman looked surprised. "It's extraordinary. Do you have recordings of your work?" Before Olivia could answer, Frank appeared at her side. "Olivia, I hate to interrupt, but your other tables need attention." He smiled warmly at her. "That was truly remarkable, though." Olivia nodded and stood up. As she walked away from the piano, customers touched her arm and murmured compliments. She felt a strange mix of embarrassment and pride. When she passed Richard's table, Jeffrey reached out to stop her. "That was incredible," he said sincerely. "You're extremely talented." "Thank you," Olivia replied, smiling at him. Richard was staring into his wine glass, swirling the red liquid slowly. He didn't look up at her. "Your dessert menus, gentlemen," Olivia said, placing them on the table. "I'll give you a few minutes to decide." She went to check on her other tables, apologizing for the wait. Most of her customers didn't mind. They were too busy talking about her performance. "I had no idea our waitress was so talented. Did you see that rich guy's face when she played her own song? She should be performing in concert halls, not serving food." Olivia felt her cheeks grow warm as she overheard these comments. She had never received such praise before, not even from her music teachers. When she returned to Richard's table, the men had ordered various desserts and coffees. Richard himself asked only for a glass of scotch. "Neat." "Right away, sir," Olivia said, gathering the menus. As she turned to leave, Richard spoke. "The piece you played last, what's it called?" Olivia turned back. "It doesn't have a name yet. I'm still working on it." "You wrote it," Richard said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes, sir." Richard nodded slowly. "When did you start composing?" "About 3 years ago, after my mother died," Olivia answered honestly. "It helped me process my feelings." Something flickered in Richard's eyes. He looked away quickly, as if uncomfortable with the conversation. "Your mother would be proud," Jeffrey said kindly. Olivia smiled at him. "Thank you, I'll get your desserts." In the kitchen, Lisa cornered her immediately. "Oh my God, Olivia. Why didn't you tell anyone you could play like that? You're amazing." "It never came up," Olivia said, feeling embarrassed by all the attention. "Frank is telling everyone you're his most talented employee," Lisa continued excitedly. "And did you see that awful rich guy's face when you played your own music? He looked like he'd seen a ghost." Olivia frowned. "Did he? I thought he just didn't like it." "Are you kidding?" He was totally stunned. Everyone was talking about it. Chef Mike said he'd never heard anything so beautiful in his life, and that guy never compliments anyone. Olivia gathered the desserts on her tray, still processing everything that had happened. She had gone from being just another waitress to the center of attention in one evening. It felt strange, but also wonderful. When she returned to Richard's table, the atmosphere had changed. The men were quieter, more subdued. Jeffrey was asking about Olivia's music school. "It's a small program at the Chicago Music Institute," she explained as she served the desserts. They offer night classes for working adults. Is it expensive? Asked one of the other men. It's about $5,000 per semester, Olivia admitted. I can only afford one class at a time, so it's taking me longer to complete the program. She placed Richard's scotch in front of him. He hadn't spoken since asking about her composition, and he seemed lost in thought. Will you play professionally when you finish school? Jeffrey asked. Olivia smiled. That's the dream. But it's competitive, and I got a late start compared to most classical pianists. Talent is talent, Jeffrey said firmly. Age shouldn't matter. As Olivia turned to check on another table, she heard Richard speak in a low voice to his friends. My mother used to play piano. His words surprised her, but she pretended not to hear. It seemed like a private comment not meant for her ears. Throughout the rest of the evening, Olivia continued serving her tables, but she noticed Richard watching her, not in the dismissive way from earlier, but with a thoughtful expression. He barely spoke to his friends anymore, and he hardly touched his scotch. Near the end of the night, as Richard's party was preparing to leave, Frank approached their table. I hope everything was to your satisfaction, gentlemen. The food was excellent, Jeffrey said, and the entertainment was exceptional. Frank beamed with pride. Olivia is one of our most valued employees. Richard stood up and put on his expensive coat. Your waitress? He said to Frank. Does she play here often? This was actually the first time, Frank admitted. Our regular pianist had to leave early. Tonight. Richard nodded, his expression unreadable. I see. Olivia approached with their bill on a small silver tray. Thank you for dining with us tonight, gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed your meal. Richard took the bill without looking at it. He pulled out a sleek wallet and placed his credit card on the tray. Process this, he said shortly. Of course, sir. When Olivia returned with the receipt, Richard signed it quickly. His friends were already heading toward the door, putting on coats and checking phones. Your promised tip, Richard said quietly, handing her a folded piece of paper. You earned it. Surprised, Olivia took it and slipped it into her pocket. Thank you, Mr. Harlow. Richard studied her face for a moment. That song you played, the one you wrote, it reminded me of something I haven't thought about in a very long time. Before Olivia could respond, he turned and walked away, joining his friends at the door. Jeffrey waved goodbye to her with a friendly smile. Only after they had left did Olivia take out the folded paper Richard had given her. She expected to find a $100 bill, generous but nowhere near the $1,000 he had mockingly promised earlier. Instead, she found a check. When she saw the amount written on it, her hands began to shake. Olivia, are you okay? Frank asked. Noticing her expression, she handed him the check wordlessly. Frank's eyes widened. $10,000? Is this real? Olivia nodded, still stunned. I think so. There's something written at the bottom, Frank pointed out. In small, neat handwriting, Richard had written, For your music school, talent shouldn't be wasted. Olivia stared at the check, unable to believe what was happening. This amount would pay for her next 2 semesters in full. She could take more classes, finish her program sooner. I don't understand, she said softly. He was so rude all evening. Frank shook his head in amazement. Something changed when you played that last piece. I've never seen anything like it. The whole room felt it. After closing time, as Olivia was changing out of her work clothes, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. This is Jeffrey Lewis from dinner tonight. Hope you don't mind that I got your number from your manager. Richard would like to speak with you about a business opportunity. Please call this number tomorrow if you're interested. Olivia sat down on the bench in the staff room, her mind racing. First the check, and now this. What kind of business opportunity could Richard Harlow possibly have for a waitress? Little did she know that her life was about to change completely. Olivia could hardly sleep that night. She kept looking at the check, wondering if it was real or if Richard Harlow would cancel it in the morning. $10,000 was more money than she had ever seen at once. It could change everything. For her music studies. The next morning, she went to her bank early and nervously handed the check to the teller. The woman examined it, typed something into her computer, and smiled. "This appears to be valid, Ms. Bennett. Would you like to deposit it into your account?" Olivia nodded, still not quite believing it. "Yes, please." After leaving the bank, she sat in a small coffee shop and stared at her phone. Jeffrey's message was still there, asking her to call about a business opportunity. What could Richard Harlow possibly want from her? Was this some kind of trick? She took a deep breath and dialed the number. "Jeffrey Lewis speaking," came a friendly voice. "Hi, this is Olivia Bennett, the waitress from the Golden Key last night." "Olivia, I'm glad you called. Did you get a chance to deposit the check?" "Yes, I just did. Please thank Mr. Harlow for me." "It was incredibly generous. You can thank him yourself. Are you free for lunch today? Say 1 hour at the Palmer House?" The Palmer House was one of the most expensive hotels in Chicago. Olivia hesitated. "I have class at 3 hour, but I could make lunch at 1 hour." "Perfect. I'll text you the details. See you." Then, Olivia spent the next few hours feeling nervous and confused. She tried practicing piano but couldn't concentrate. Finally, she put on her nicest outfit, a simple blue dress she wore for recitals, and headed downtown to the Palmer House. The hotel lobby was grand, with a beautiful painted ceiling and marble floors. Olivia felt out of place among the well-dressed business people and tourists. Jeffrey spotted her from across the lobby and waved her over. He looked different in casual clothes, younger and less formal. "Thanks for coming, Olivia. Richard is waiting in the restaurant." She followed Jeffrey to an elegant dining room where Richard Harlow sat alone at a corner table. He wore an expensive-looking gray suit and was reading something on a tablet. When he saw them approach, he stood up. "Ms. Bennett, thank you for coming." His voice was polite but reserved, very different from his rude tone the night before. "Please call me Olivia." She sat down across from him, feeling awkward. "Richard has a proposition for you," Jeffrey said, sitting beside them. "I think you'll find it interesting." A waiter appeared with menus, but Richard waved him away. "We'll order later." He fixed his blue eyes on Olivia. "I want to be direct. Your playing last night was exceptional. The piece you composed yourself was moving." "Thank you," Olivia said, surprised by the compliment. "I'm opening a new music foundation next month," Richard continued. "The Harlow Foundation for Musical Excellence. We'll provide scholarships, instruments, and performance opportunities to talented musicians who lack resources." Olivia nodded, wondering what this had to do with her. "I'd like you to perform at the opening gala," Richard said. "Your original composition specifically. I'll pay you $20,000 for one night." Olivia nearly choked. $20,000? For one performance? "The event will be attended by wealthy donors and influential people in the music world," Jeffrey explained. "It's a chance to make important connections." "I don't understand," Olivia said, looking between them. "Why me? You could hire any professional musician." Richard's expression changed slightly. He seemed to be considering how much to say. "Your music spoke to me," he finally said. "It was authentic in a way most performances aren't." There was more to it than that, Olivia sensed, but Richard clearly wasn't ready to explain further. "I'd be honored to perform at your gala," she said. "But I don't need $20,000. The check you already gave me is more than generous." "This isn't charity," Richard said firmly. "This is business. 20,000 is the standard fee for a performer of your caliber at an event of this importance." Olivia doubted that was true, but she didn't argue. "When is the gala?" 4 weeks from now. June 28th, Jeffrey said. "We'll arrange for a professional recording of your performance as well." "I'd need time off from the restaurant," Olivia said, thinking out loud. Richard made a dismissive gesture. "If you accept this offer, you can quit that job. I'll have plenty of other opportunities for you after the gala." Olivia felt overwhelmed. Everything was happening so fast. "Can I think about it?" "Of course," Jeffrey said kindly. "Take the weekend to consider it." Richard looked slightly annoyed at the delay but nodded. "Fine, let's order lunch while you think." Over an expensive meal that cost more than Olivia usually spent on food in a week, they discussed the details of the gala. Richard asked about her composition, and Olivia explained how she had written it after her mother's death. Music helped me express feelings I couldn't put into words, she said. Richard nodded, his eyes distant. My mother played piano, he said, abruptly. I mentioned it last night. I remember, Olivia said softly. She was talented, like you. Never performed professionally, though. Richard's voice was carefully controlled. Your piece reminded me of a lullaby she used to play for me as a child. Jeffrey looked surprised, as if this was news to him as well. Is your mother still alive? Olivia asked gently. Richard's face hardened. No. She left when I was 8. I never saw her again. The pain in his voice was raw despite his attempt to hide it. Suddenly, Olivia understood why her music had affected him so deeply. She had accidentally touched an old wound. I'm sorry, she said. Richard waved away her sympathy. Ancient history. What matters now is the foundation, and your performance. After lunch, Richard was called away for a business meeting. Jeffrey walked Olivia out of the hotel. He likes you, Jeffrey said as they stood in the grand lobby. That's rare. Richard doesn't like many people. He seemed to hate me last night, Olivia pointed out. Jeffrey smiled. Until you played that piece. I've known Richard for 5 years, and I've never seen him react to anything like that. Because it reminded him of his mother? Partly. But I think it's more than that. Jeffrey lowered his voice. Richard lost his mother at a young age just like you did, but he never processed that grief. He buried it under work and success and money, and my music brought it back up, Olivia said, understanding. Jeffrey nodded. Your music made him feel something he's been avoiding for decades. That's why he's so interested in you. I'm not sure how I feel about that, Olivia admitted. Just be yourself, Jeffrey advised, and play like you did last night. That's all he really wants. Over the next few days, Olivia thought carefully about Richard's offer. The money was incredible, enough to finish her music program and have plenty left over. And the connection she could make at the gala might open doors she had only dreamed of. But there was something unsettling about Richard's interest in her music. She didn't want to be used as some kind of emotional therapy for a troubled billionaire. In the end, her love of music made the decision for her. This was a chance to perform for people who could help her career. She couldn't turn it down. On Monday morning, she called Jeffrey and accepted the offer. That afternoon, she gave notice at the Golden Key. Frank was disappointed to lose her but understood completely. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, Olivia. You'd be crazy to turn it down. The next 4 weeks passed in a blur. Richard arranged for Olivia to practice on a Steinway grand piano identical to the one that would be at the gala. He hired a famous music coach to help her prepare, and a stylist to create the perfect look for her performance. Olivia worked harder than ever, refining her composition and practicing for hours each day. She expanded the piece, adding new sections that expressed not just her grief for her mother but also her hopes for the future. 1 week before the gala, Richard asked to hear the finished piece. They met at a private recording studio with just Jeffrey present. Olivia played the entire composition, now nearly 15 minutes long. When she finished, she turned to see Richard's reaction. His face was carefully blank, but his eyes were wet with unshed tears. That's it, he said quietly. That's exactly what I want for the opening. Olivia nodded, feeling both proud and slightly uncomfortable. It was clear her music had a powerful effect on Richard, but she still didn't fully understand why. That evening, as she was leaving the studio, Jeffrey caught up with her. There's something you should know about Richard, he said, looking serious. Something that might help you understand his interest in your music. What is it? Olivia asked. Jeffrey hesitated, then handed her a folded newspaper clipping. This is from 20 years ago. Richard doesn't know I have it. Olivia took the yellowed paper and opened it carefully. It was an obituary for Eleanor Harlow, beloved pianist and mother, who had died of cancer at age 42. The date was exactly 3 weeks after Richard had said she left him. He told everyone she abandoned the family, Jeffrey explained quietly. Even himself, I think. It was easier than facing the truth. Olivia stared at the obituary, a wave of understanding washing over her. Richard's mother hadn't abandoned him. She had died, and he had been unable to accept it. And now, 30 years later, Olivia's music about her own mother's death had finally broken through his walls. The night of the gala arrived. The Harlow Foundation for Musical Excellence was launching at the Chicago Symphony Center, a grand building in the heart of downtown. Limousines and luxury cars lined the street as guests in formal wear made their way inside. Olivia waited nervously backstage. She wore a simple but elegant black dress that the stylist had chosen for her. Her blonde hair was arranged in a sophisticated updo, and she wore light makeup that highlighted her blue eyes. 5 minutes, Ms. Bennett, a stage manager said, poking his head into her dressing room. Olivia nodded, her heart racing. This was by far the biggest moment of her musical career. The audience was filled with wealthy donors, music industry professionals, and journalists. Richard had told her that several music school directors would be attending as well. A light knock came at her door. It was Jeffrey, looking handsome in a tuxedo. "How are you feeling?" he asked kindly. "Terrified," Olivia admitted. "I've never played for an audience like this." Jeffrey smiled. "You'll be wonderful. Just play like you did that night at the restaurant." "Has Richard arrived?" she asked. Jeffrey nodded. "He's greeting guests. He seems different tonight. Almost nervous." Olivia thought about the obituary Jeffrey had shown her. She had been carrying that knowledge for a week now, unsure what to do with it. Should she tell Richard she knew the truth about his mother, or would that only make things worse? "It's time," the stage manager called. Olivia took a deep breath and followed Jeffrey to the side of the stage. From there, she could see the packed concert hall. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the audience. On stage was a magnificent grand piano, spotlit and waiting. Richard stood at a podium, addressing the crowd. He looked perfectly composed in an expensive black suit, his salt and pepper hair neatly styled. The Harlow Foundation aims to discover and support musical talent regardless of background or resources, he was saying. Too often, brilliant musicians remain undiscovered due to lack of opportunity. His eyes scanned the audience as he spoke. "My mother was such a musician. Eleanor Harlow was a gifted pianist who never had the chance to share her talent with the world." Olivia gasped softly. Richard was publicly acknowledging his mother as a pianist for the first time in decades. "Tonight, I'm honored to introduce a remarkable young woman whose music reminds us why we need this foundation," Richard continued. "Please welcome Olivia Bennett." The audience applauded as Olivia walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, making it hard to see individual faces. She focused on the piano, her safe place. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it slightly. Then she looked up and saw Richard taking a seat in the front row. Their eyes met briefly. He gave her a small nod. Olivia placed her fingers on the keys and began to play her composition. She had named it Eleanor's Lullaby, a private tribute to both her mother and Richard's. She hadn't told him about the title yet. The music started softly, tentatively, like a childhood memory barely remembered. Then it grew stronger, more confident, as if the memory was becoming clearer. Olivia lost herself in the music, forgetting the audience, forgetting her nerves. There was only the piano and the emotions flowing through her fingers. When she reached the middle section, the part that expressed loss and grief, she dared to glance at Richard. He sat completely still, his eyes closed, listening with intense concentration. The final part of the piece spoke of healing and hope, with a gentle callback to the opening melody. As Olivia played the last notes, letting them fade slowly into silence, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. For a moment after she finished, the concert hall was completely silent. Then the audience erupted in applause. People stood from their seats clapping enthusiastically. Some were wiping tears from their eyes. Olivia stood and took a bow, her heart full. She had done it. She had played her best for this important audience, and they had responded with genuine appreciation. As she left the stage, Richard was waiting in the wings. His face showed more emotion than she had ever seen from him. "That was perfect," he said quietly. "Thank you." Olivia took a chance. "I named it Eleanor's Lullaby," she told him. Richard's eyes widened slightly. He seemed about to speak, then just nodded and turned away. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Olivia was introduced to dozens of important people who praised her performance and asked about her background. 3 different music school directors offered her scholarships on the spot. A record producer gave her his card and asked her to call him about recording an album. Near the end of the night, Olivia found herself standing alone by a window, overwhelmed by everything that had happened. Jeffrey approached with 2 glasses of champagne. "Quite a night," he said, handing her a glass. "You're the talk of the event." Olivia smiled. "It doesn't feel real. Yesterday I was a waitress. Today I'm being offered recording contracts. That's what happens when real talent meets the right opportunity," Jeffrey said. "Richard has been watching you all evening. He looks proud, like a father at his daughter's recital. Has he said anything about the title of my piece?" Olivia asked. Jeffrey shook his head. "Not to me, but I think it meant a lot to him." Across the room, Richard was deep in conversation with an older man. As if sensing they were talking about him, he looked up and met Olivia's eyes. After a moment, he excused himself and walked over to them. "Ms. Bennett, there are a few more people who would like to meet you," he said formally. "Of course," Olivia replied. As they walked together, she gathered her courage. "Mr. Harlow, Richard, I know about your mother. Jeffrey showed me the obituary." Richard stopped walking. His face went very still. "I see." "I'm sorry for what happened," Olivia said gently. "And I'm sorry if my music brought up painful memories." Richard was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "For 30 years, I told everyone she left us. It was easier than admitting she died and I couldn't save her." "You were just a child," Olivia said. "She was sick for 2 years. Before the end," Richard continued as if he needed to say it out loud after all this time, "she would play piano when the pain wasn't too bad. That lullaby, the one your music reminded me of, was the last thing she ever played for me." Olivia felt tears in her eyes. "That's why you wanted me to perform tonight, to honor her memory." Richard nodded. "When you played that night at the restaurant, it was like hearing her again. I hadn't allowed myself to remember in so long." "Thank you for giving me this opportunity," Olivia said sincerely. "It's changed my life." "You earned it with your talent," Richard replied. "Now come meet the Dean of Juilliard. He's very impressed with you." 6 months later, Olivia gave her first public concert at Carnegie Hall. She had left her waitress job far behind and was now a full-time student at Juilliard, with a recording contract and growing recognition in the classical music world. Richard attended the concert with Jeffrey. He had become something of a mentor to Olivia, using his connections to open doors for her while respecting her desire to succeed on her own merits. The final piece of her concert was Eleanor's Lullaby, now expanded into a full concerto. As she played, Olivia thought about the strange turn her life had taken, from serving food to a rude billionaire to performing on one of the world's greatest stages. When she finished playing, the audience gave her a standing ovation. Flowers were brought onto the stage. Olivia took her bows, smiling with joy. From his seat in the front row, Richard Harlow applauded with genuine pride. The hardness that had once defined his face was softened now. The music had healed something in him that money and success never could. Backstage after the concert, he handed Olivia a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate gold locket. "It was my mother's," he explained. "She would have wanted you to have it." Olivia opened the locket to find a tiny photograph of a woman sitting at a piano, her face alight with the joy of music. "Thank you," she said, embracing Richard. "No," he replied quietly. "Thank you for playing the song that silenced the room and helped me find my way back to the truth." News of Olivia's rise from waitress to concert pianist spread quickly. People loved the story of how a billionaire's cruel challenge had revealed an extraordinary talent. But only Olivia and Richard knew the full truth. How a song born from one mother's memory had healed the wounds left by another's loss. The Golden Key restaurant hung a photograph of Olivia by their piano, telling guests proudly about their former waitress who now performed in concert halls around the world. And whenever Olivia returned to Chicago, she would visit and play a piece or two, remembering where her journey had truly begun.